Can a feminist professor of communications make a legitimate case that a license plate contributes to rape culture? That's my subject on today's Fiamengo File. I'm Janice Fiamengo of the University of Ottawa. Over the past 30 years, academic feminism has had a profound impact on educational theory, on sexual assault law, domestic violence research, sexual harassment legislation, equity hiring policies, government programs to advantage women, perceptions of men as privileged and masculinity as toxic, and many other areas of our culture. But now it can even affect whether you can put your own name on your license plate. Lorne Graber is a resident of Nova Scotia, Canada, who first purchased as a gift for his father back in 1990 a personalized license plate bearing his last name, spelled Grabher. Over the years, the plate became a symbol of family pride. Lorne had the Graber plate for more than 2 decades, and his son Troy, who lives in Alberta, also has one. But in 2016, the personalized plate was revoked after somebody complained that it was offensive, and officials in the Motor Vehicles Office of Nova Scotia agreed that it was. Since then, Mr. Graber has taken the province to court to fight for his right to retain the plate, and the Nova Scotia government has hired an expert witness at significant expense, $15,000 according to Graber's legal team, to produce a lengthy report arguing that in the era of Donald Trump, the license plate promotes sexual violence against women and rape culture. The expert is a McGill University professor of communications named Carrie Rentschler, not Rentschher, please note, and not Rent-her. And this professor specializes in, you guessed it, feminist theory. Professor Rentschler is no run-of-the-mill feminist scholar either. She is the William Dawson Scholar of Feminist Media Studies, which is a distinguished university position. In her words, it is a, quote, university-funded research chair dedicated to the study of media and feminist issues and the training of highly qualified personnel in this area, end quote. Rentschler's report, which is available at the website of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, is a textbook example of the remarkable intellectual achievement of academic feminism. I've been reading feminist BS for many years now, but this howler of a report really may take the cake. And I encourage everyone to read it and to marvel that once respectable university scholarship has come to this. So let me say a few words about the report. It begins by introducing an academic theory of language in order to make its rather simplistic analysis sound deep. Professor Rentschler cites a big gun philosopher of language named J.L. Austin, telling us that he, quote, conceptualized language as speech acts, or what he called performatives. Performatives are types of speech that act in the world and have real-world effects. According to Rentschler, this means that it doesn't matter that Graber is actually the vehicle owner's name, because at a time when hashtags commonly join words together to create social media tags, the license plate can be seen not as a name, but as an injunction or an imperative. Grab her. And this is a speech act that, according to Professor Rentschler, quote, supports, condones, and encourages violence against women, end quote. Now, the reference to speech act theory sounds suitably academic, but there's a slight problem with the reference to J.L. Austin, who did indeed develop the theory, but didn't equate all speech acts with performatives, as Professor Rentschler states. Now, if there are any experts in language theory out there, tell me if I'm wrong. I studied Austin a long time ago, but in my understanding, Austin identified a number of different types of speech acts, of which performatives are only one restricted type. As even a glance at Wikipedia explains, a performative is a type of speech act in which the locution or the statement actually does what it says. So, I hereby pronounce you man and wife is a performative. I christen this ship, the Fiamengo Mengo. I am firing you. I call this meeting to order. These are all performatives because they literally do what they say. They act in the world, and they function in specific, usually quite formal contexts in which the person making the statement has the social authority to enact it. Graber, on the other hand, even if interpreted as an injunction to grab a woman, which I think is a big if, it doesn't belong to the narrow class of utterances considered performatives by Austin. So Professor Rentschler has made an undergraduate level error of rather significant proportions, in my opinion. Well, even if we put aside the communication professor's faulty understanding of language theory, there are logical flaws and passages of gassy rhetoric aplenty in her claim that Graber is an offensive statement that, quote, encourages its recipients to grab or grope female individuals with or without their consent and contributes to a, quote, hateful and threatening, end quote, rape culture. The entire report exhibits the kind of circular reasoning that is typical of feminist theory, in which something that to ordinary people seems a relatively benign or at least neutral or ambiguous expression is deemed sexist and therefore violent because it is said to be an expression of a culture that is sexist and therefore violent, and at the same time is said to contribute to the sexism and violence of the culture that pre-existed it and made it sexist and violent in the first place. It's a kind of endless chicken and egg dance in which no proof is ever brought forward either that the culture is sexist and violent in any kind of totalizing sense, or that the individual utterance demonstrably worsens the culture's level of sexism and violence. Both claims are simply asserted and reasserted with reference to other feminist theorists who assert and reassert the same thing. This is the classic feminist modus operandi. Take an ordinary action or saying, then link it with the violence of rape, claim without any evidence that the two things exist on a continuum of sexual violence, and assert that such sexual violence is both widespread and dangerously under-recognized. Then claim that anyone who fails to see the connection is simply proof of how widespread the under-recognized problem of sexual violence really is. In a key section of her argument, Professor Rentschler has the chutzpah to claim that those who don't see the offense of Graber are, you guessed it, rape apologists. Here's how she phrases this. Quote, those who find the license plate offensive are likely to be opposed to violence against women and the cultural expressions, that support it. Those who do not find it offensive would in turn be supportive of or would condone violence against women and the cultural expressions that represent it as legitimate, end quote. This is a classic logical fallacy called the false dilemma. It's when you say that there are only two alternatives when in fact there are more than two. And it's unworthy of any rational person, let alone a professor of communications. And yet it is stated in the report as if it were some sort of important truth. Give me a break. Of course, there are other possible and likely responses to the license plate. In addition to assuming correctly that it is probably somebody's name, one could interpret it in a positive way, as an injunction to love and admire the woman in one's life. Grab her and hold her tight. If you love her, grab her while you have the chance. Don't let her go, and so on. If we're going to talk about context determining the meaning of an utterance, as Professor Rentschler does, well, popular music is full of non-violent references to lovers who want to, quote, grab her attention, Swift and quick, that's the Smashing Pumpkins. Or grab her hand and spin her round and round, that's R. Kelly, the song Steppin' Into Heaven. Or, quote, grab your partner and swing her around, that's Conway Twitty. I mean, there's a long and honorable tradition testifying to love between men and women that Rentschler, who's fixated on Donald Trump, doesn't even mention. And she can't mention it, of course, because her entire argument rests on our presumed culture of sexualized violence. To acknowledge the context of positive expressions involving grab her would be to acknowledge that we don't live in a culture in which violence against women is widespread and condoned. In fact, we live in a culture in which women are cherished and in which violence against women is abhorred. Our culture cherishes women so much that it took only one complaint for the government of Nova Scotia to ban the license plate. Professor Rentschler's poorly written piece of feminist claptrap certainly doesn't prove that Graeber promotes violence against women, but unfortunately it strongly suggests that even motor vehicles offices have become feminist compliant institutes of mass surveillance.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support us on Patreon. If even half of our subscribers gave us $1 per month, we'd be well on our way to creating more and better content. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Studio Brule.